March 31, 1943. Dawn stretches across the jagged ridges of El Guetter, Tunisia. The desert sand shimmers like molten gold under a rising sun, but the air is heavy with tension. You can almost feel the dry wind whipping against your face, carrying the distant echo of artillery. Somewhere out there, Patton's tanks are moving, silent, purposeful, a steel tide creeping across the dunes. Inside a cramped command tent, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, the so-called Desert Fox, leans over his desk. Ink-stained fingers grip a fountain pen as he jots meticulous notes on his latest defensive maneuvers. He's exhausted, worn from months of back and forth across this unforgiving terrain. His eyes, sharp yet weary, scan the horizon through a slit in the canvas. Then a report arrives, movement in the American lines, further north than anyone anticipated. Rommel pauses. The words blur for a second. Tanks, mechanized infantry, they're flanking, unexpected, reckless, or brilliant. He scribbles furiously, trying to track the shifting front. Every line of his Afrika Korps formation feels suddenly vulnerable. His carefully calculated positions, dugouts, minefields, artillery placements, all at risk of being bypassed. The desert seems to hold its breath. Somewhere on the ridge, a Sherman tank emerges, its turret glinting in the sun. Dust clouds mark the advance of American armor. Rommel's staff officers murmur, exchanging worried glances. The Desert Fox rarely shows doubt, yet today there's a flicker of disbelief in his eyes. He reads the latest dispatch again. Patton has executed a bold flanking maneuver, one that defies conventional expectations. It's fast, precise, almost audacious. The American general's Third Army is moving in a way Rommel hadn't predicted, undermining entire defensive lines that had taken weeks to fortify. Rommel's pen scratches across the paper. His words are sharp, clipped. Unvorstelbar, he writes unimaginable. He leans back, chest tight, mind racing. The man who outsmarted the Desert Fox himself. In a single, calculated stroke, Patton has challenged the very logic of his desert warfare. Outside the tent, a shell explodes in the distance. Sand erupts like a geyser, and somewhere, a soldier yells. The noise is deafening, yet Rommel is still scribbling. Admiration and frustration wrestle across his face. He cannot ignore the brilliance of the move, even if it threatens to unravel everything he has built. Rommel's gaze shifts to the map stretched across the table. Lines crisscross, arrows pointing to defensive positions, supply routes, artillery ranges. And there it is, an empty corridor that Patton's tanks could exploit. His eyes narrow. He knows the implications. If the Americans press this advantage, the Afrika Korps could be trapped, encircled, forced into retreat. A tension so thick you could slice it with a knife fills the tent. Staff officers hesitate, waiting for guidance. Rommel doesn't give orders yet. He writes, he calculates, he breathes. One thought dominates: how did Patton see what no one else did? Then a sudden realization hits. Patton's advance isn't reckless, it's deliberate, strategic, precise. Every movement measured to exploit weakness, to stretch the German lines thin. Rommel feels a twinge of something he rarely admits: respect. But admiration cannot erase the threat. Not here, not now. Rommel's pen hovers over the page. The desert outside seems endless, but within its expanse, the chessboard has shifted in an instant. And somewhere, hidden by sand and sun, Patton is already setting the next trap. Mini cliffhanger. Rommel knows the flanking maneuver is only the beginning. But can the Afrika Korps adapt before it's too late? By mid-morning, the desert is alive with motion. Sherman tanks roar across the dunes, their engines tearing through the silence like thunder. Dust rises in thick clouds, blurring the horizon. You can almost feel the vibrations through the sand as Patton's armored columns fan out, sliding around the Afrika Korps positions with uncanny precision. Rommel studies the map again, tracing the Americans' path with a finger. His well-laid defensive lines, infantry entrenched behind ridges, artillery emplacements poised to sweep the open plains, are suddenly compromised. Every tank that slides past a German flank is another breach, another crack in his fortress. He scribbles notes frantically, troop movements, supply routes, weak points, but already he can see the pattern. The German officers in the tent exchange grim glances. Lieutenant General Georg Stumm, Rommel's second-in-command, breaks the silence. They move faster than expected, Main Feldmarschall. Our right flank is exposed. His voice trembles, though he tries to mask it with authority. Rommel doesn't respond immediately. He just stares, absorbing the enormity of the maneuver. Outside, gunfire erupts in short, sharp bursts. The Americans have begun engaging the rearguard. The desert is alive with the smell of burning fuel and gunpowder. Rommel notes the positions of the 10th Panzer Division and the 21st Panzer Division, realizing they are dangerously stretched. His formations, once solid and predictable, now resemble shifting sands themselves, fluid, vulnerable, impossible to hold against Patton's relentless advance. A courier arrives, panting, covered in dust. He hands Rommel a report. American artillery is already pounding the secondary German positions. Supply lines are cut. Communications disrupted. Rommel flips the paper over, his jaw tightening. The Desert Fox is calculating, always calculating, but even he knows the next few hours could define the fate of his forces in Tunisia. Patton's brilliance is evident not just in speed, but in psychological warfare. German soldiers report tanks appearing where none should be, columns vanishing and reappearing elsewhere, leaving chaos in their wake. Rommel writes in his notes, frustration laced with awe. Patton sees the battlefield as a single organism, every move calculated, every gap exploited. Then came the crucial moment. The Sherman tanks pivot, encircling a German infantry regiment dug in near El Getter. Artillery shells scream overhead as the Americans tighten their grip. Rommel watches through binoculars, the realization hitting him like a punch to the chest. The Afrika Korps lines could collapse within hours if reinforcements do not arrive. And yet, as he scribbles furiously, Rommel cannot help but admire the audacity. This is not mere luck. This is tactical genius, a man reshaping the rules of desert warfare in real time. Every decision Patton makes seems to anticipate Rommel's countermoves. The Desert Fox, undefeated in prior campaigns, experiences a rare moment of uncertainty, and it stings. Mini cliffhanger, Rommel knows he must act, but how do you stop a move that you never saw coming? And with the Americans closing in, time is already slipping away. By late afternoon, the desert sun beats down relentlessly, turning sand into a shimmering, almost liquid expanse. The Afrika Korps is scattered across ridges and valleys, trying to adjust to the unexpected encirclement. Rommel paces the tent, his eyes darting between the map, reports, and horizon. Every word he scribbles carries urgency, every line a desperate attempt to predict Patton's next move. He stops suddenly, gripping the edge of the table. The realization hits him in full force. This is no ordinary advance. Patton has dismantled the defensive logic that Rommel had spent weeks perfecting. The flanking maneuver wasn't just clever, it's transformative. American tanks and mechanized infantry are now operating as a single, cohesive force, moving faster than supply lines, faster than thought itself. Outside, explosions rock the desert. Smoke curls toward the sky, mingling with the golden haze of sand. You can almost feel the heat radiating from the guns, hear the screams of engines and the sharp cracks of small arms fire. German soldiers struggle to maintain formation, panicked by the appearance of Sherman tanks where none should be. Their morale wavers. Some glance at the horizon, hopping for reinforcements that might not come in time. Rommel writes again, his handwriting jagged. Patton exploits every weakness, anticipates every response. Entire formations rendered obsolete. His face tightens, a mix of frustration, disbelief, and begrudging admiration. He has fought in North Africa for years, seen victories and near disasters, yet this is something different, something audacious, something brilliant. He looks at Stumm, who reports that units on the right flank are in danger of being overrun. Rommel nods, acknowledging the reality. The Desert Fox rarely shows doubt, but today he feels it creeping in, a shadow over his legendary confidence. The balance of power has shifted, even if only temporarily. Patton has turned strategy into an art form, a precise machine that moves faster than anyone could have imagined. And yet in the chaos of his command tent, Rommel cannot ignore the truth. He must respond. Every decision is critical, every order carries weight. A single misstep could turn a tactical setback into a catastrophe. Outside, the desert stretches endlessly, but in those hours it feels small, intimate. Every dune, every ridge a potential trap, every shadow a threat. Mini cliffhanger. As Patton's forces tighten their grip, Rommel prepares to make a move that could either save the Afrika Korps or seal its fate. But will his genius be enough to match Patton's audacity? Evening falls over El Getter, casting long shadows across the sand dunes. The heat of the day gives way to a biting chill, and the desert seems eerily quiet, almost anticipating the storm to come. Inside his command tent, Rommel is a man possessed. Sweat and dust coat his uniform, but his mind races faster than the night winds outside. Every report, every map, every sketch of troop positions is scrutinized, analyzed, questioned. Rommel summons his division commanders, their faces tight with tension. "We cannot allow them to encircle us," he says, voice sharp, authoritative. "Every unit must hold. Reinforcements must move immediately to the flanks. We will cut their advance at the ridge near WWII. His words carry the weight of desperation masked as command. He knows full well that the Afrika Korps is stretched thin, supply lines overextended, and morale fraying, but giving in is not an option. Outside, German engineers hastily lay mines and prepare anti-tank obstacles, knowing that Sherman tanks could appear from any direction. Artillery crews work under torchlight, recalculating firing angles to cover gaps in the line. Rommel moves among them, directing with precision born from years of battlefield experience. Yet, beneath his steely exterior, there's an undercurrent of doubt. He can feel the American advance slipping past calculations like water through fingers. Meanwhile, Patton's forces are relentless. Sherman tanks maneuver with uncanny synchronicity, infantry advancing behind armored columns, artillery supporting each push. The Americans exploit every gap, probing German defenses, forcing Rommel to adjust constantly. His notes grow longer, margins filled with corrections, arrows, and exclamation points. Admiration creeps into his meticulous documentation, even as fear tightens his chest. Rommel pauses and looks at a map of the battlefield spread across the tent table. Supply lines, defensive positions, artillery ranges, all are marked in painstaking detail. And yet, he realizes that the American general is playing a game of chess he can barely keep up with. Patton isn't just attacking, he's dictating the tempo, shaping the battlefield before Rommel can react. A sudden report arrives. American tanks have crossed a critical junction, threatening the rear of the 10th Panzer Division. Rommel's jaw tightens. This isn't just a flanking maneuver, it's a calculated risk with devastating potential. The Desert Fox scribbles furiously, marking new positions, sending orders for counterattacks, trying to regain control. Every second counts. Every misstep could unravel weeks of planning. Mini cliffhanger. As night descends, both armies brace for the next move. But in the shadows, Patton is already planning the strike that could shatter Rommel's defenses completely. Will the Desert Fox survive the ingenuity of the American assault? Or will the desert claim yet another legend? Night descends over El Getter like a velvet curtain, muffling the sounds of distant gunfire, but not the tension. The desert transforms into an eerie, shifting landscape of shadows and silhouettes. You can almost hear the soft grind of tank treads over sand, the occasional staccato crack of a rifle, the anxious murmurs of men waiting for the next order. Inside his tent, Rommel studies the flickering lamplight over his maps, surrounded by exhausted staff officers. Every piece of intelligence, every report from scouts is cross-checked, rechecked, and double-checked. His hand trembles slightly as he scribbles notes, rare for the Desert Fox. He is calculating, predicting, anticipating, but Patton's flanking maneuver has forced him into uncharted territory. Across the battlefield, American engineers quietly repair vehicles and reposition artillery under the cover of darkness. Sherman tanks, like shadows themselves, slip into unexpected positions. Patton's voice echoes across the radio, crisp, commanding, almost playful. "Keep moving. Force the line to bend. Don't let them see us coming." Every movement is synchronized, deliberate, designed to disorient the Afrika Korps. Rommel peers through binoculars into the desert night. He can see the dim glimmer of headlights, the faint movement of silhouettes shifting like ghosts among the dunes. For the first time, he feels a rare vulnerability, the feeling that the battlefield is no longer fully under his control. He scribbles furiously in his notebook. They anticipate every position, every response. Impossible. The night is broken by an explosion to the east. German soldiers yell, scrambling for cover. Reports flood in. An American armored column has slipped past their forward positions and is threatening a supply depot. Rommel's heart quickens. Every second lost now multiplies the risk. The flanking maneuver isn't just clever, it's becoming decisive. Yet even in the tension, a grudging respect creeps into his notes. Patton's audacity, precision, and timing are beyond anything he has faced in North Africa. The Desert Fox, who once prided himself on unpredictability, is being outmaneuvered on his own ground. He pauses, inhaling the dry night air, and wonders, can any defense withstand such relentless pressure? Mini cliffhanger. With dawn approaching, Rommel must make a choice. Counterattack and risk annihilation, or withdraw and preserve his forces, but lose the desert. What will the Desert Fox do when the audacity of Patton meets the brilliance of German strategy? March 31st bleeds into April 1st. Dawn arrives over Algeta with a pale, cold light that glances off sand dunes like steel. The desert, which felt infinite at night, now reveals the stark reality of the battlefield. Dust rises in the east where Patton's tanks continue their relentless advance, engines roaring, treads carving lines across the terrain. The sound is deafening, a mechanical heartbeat that seems to mock the German positions. Inside his command tent, Rommel stands rigid, staring at the map. The lines he drew with painstaking care, trenches, artillery placements, minefields, are disrupted. Entire regiments are isolated, their communication lines severed. He scribbles notes frantically, adding corrections, arrows, and annotations. Rapid armored flanking. Morale of units critical. Reinforcements delayed. His handwriting is jagged now, reflecting a tension that even he cannot mask. Reports arrive faster than he can process. Sherman tanks have penetrated the right flank. American infantry has secured high ground that was thought secure. Artillery units are repositioning under enemy fire. Rommel's staff exchange grim looks, the fear of imminent encirclement palpable. The Desert Fox is calculating, as always, but even he feels the weight of an unprecedented challenge pressing against him. Patton's brilliance is on full display. The flanking maneuver has created confusion, stretched German defenses, and forced reactive decisions at every level. Every move seems preemptive, as if Patton anticipated Rommel's reactions before the Desert Fox himself did. The audacity is breathtaking. You can almost feel the desert itself bending to the will of the American general. Rommel scribbles a final note in that morning's session. Patton executes with precision, tactics beyond expectation, must consider withdrawal if lines cannot hold. Admiration fights with frustration in his eyes. He respects the ingenuity, even as the threat becomes undeniable. This is a confrontation not just of men and machines, but of minds, the Desert Fox against the American tank genius. Then a shell erupts near the tent, throwing sand and debris into the air. Staff officers duck instinctively. The desert trembles, and Rommel's pen stops mid-line. Time is slipping away, and the Afrika Korps may soon face a choice that will determine the course of the campaign. Mini cliffhanger. Rommel realizes that Patton's maneuver is more than just a tactical stroke. It could redefine the war in North Africa. But can even the Desert Fox recover from an audacity so calculated, so precise? By mid-morning, the desert is a furnace. Sunlight beats down mercilessly on the shifting sands, and the heat radiates off the shattered terrain where tanks and infantry clash. The Afrika Korps struggles to regroup. Smoke rises from overturned trucks and burning artillery, a chaotic tapestry of fire and dust that stretches for miles. Rommel moves between his officers like a general possessed, eyes scanning, voice clipped, every order delivered with precision. Patton's flanking maneuver has stretched German lines to the breaking point. Sherman tanks have slipped past key checkpoints, and American infantry has seized the high ground, cutting off supply routes. Rommel's meticulously planned formations are fracturing under the relentless pressure. He scribbles notes furiously, each word a desperate calculation. Reposition 15th Panzer, counterattack delayed, supply convoy at risk, morale critical. His staff officers watch him with a mixture of awe and fear. They know the Desert Fox rarely admits vulnerability, yet today, tension shadows every gesture. Rommel peers through binoculars at the American advance, noting how tanks and infantry move in seamless coordination, artillery covering every gap. He mutters under his breath, almost to himself. They anticipate every move, every line we hold is already compromised. Elsewhere on the battlefield, German soldiers struggle to maintain cohesion. Orders are shouted across sand-choked air, yet confusion reigns. Sherman tanks appear in unexpected sectors, forcing rapid withdrawals. Rommel's voice cuts through the chaos, rallying his men, redirecting artillery, calculating countermoves, but the desert itself seems to conspire against him. And yet, amid the pressure, a reluctant admiration creeps in. Patton's maneuver is not just effective, it's elegant in its audacity. Every decision seems to anticipate Rommel's response, every strike calculated to destabilize the German formations. Even the Desert Fox cannot help but recognize brilliance in the enemy's hand. Mini cliffhanger. As the day wears on, Rommel must make a choice. Risk everything in a desperate counterattack or retreat and preserve what remains of the Afrika Korps. But with Patton pressing relentlessly, which path will define history? Late afternoon drapes the desert in golden light, shadows stretching long across dunes scarred by battle. The roar of engines and crack of artillery have not ceased. If anything, the cacophony intensifies. You can almost feel the vibrations through the sand as Sherman tanks weave between German positions, leaving destruction in their wake. Every German unit is stretched thin, every command desperate. Rommel stands over the map, his eyes sharp, jaw tight. He traces the paths of Patton's advance with a finger, the weight of realization pressing down on him. The flanking maneuver isn't just a tactical success, it has forced the Afrika Korps onto the defensive, threatening to undo weeks of careful planning. Lines he once considered secure are now exposed, and the very geography of El Getter has been turned against him. He scribbles notes fast, almost feverishly. American armor exploits every gap. Infantry moves with precision. Artillery support synchronized. Countermeasures must be immediate. His pen scratches across the paper like the sound of gunfire itself, documenting both the threat and, begrudgingly, the brilliance behind it. The turning point comes when a report arrives. An American armored column has taken the ridge near Wadi Akarit, cutting off a critical supply route. Rommel feels a pang of disbelief. This ridge was the linchpin of the German defense. If it falls completely, the Afrika Korps faces encirclement. Officers exchange grim glances, whispering possible retreat routes, but Rommel's mind is already racing ahead. Every move he considers must counter Patton's ingenuity without overextending his own lines. Outside, the desert is alive with fire and smoke, the battlefield stretching as far as the eye can see. German artillery fires desperately, but each salvo seems one step behind the Americans, who advance with uncanny timing. Patton's strategy, audacious and precise, has turned the terrain itself into an ally. Rommel writes again, "Desert Fox confronted by fox of steel, calculations insufficient. Adapt or perish." And yet, even in this moment of pressure, there's grudging admiration. Rommel, undefeated in North Africa until now, recognizes that he is witnessing something rare, a combination of audacity, speed, and tactical genius that he himself would have respected in any officer. The realization stings, but it also fuels the Desert Fox's resolve. Mini cliffhanger. Patton has gained the upper hand, but Rommel is far from defeated. The next decisions will determine whether the Afrika Korps survives or is shattered forever. But which path will the Desert Fox choose under the shadow of Patton's brilliance? Twilight settles over El Gedder, painting the desert in bruised purples and deep oranges. Shadows lengthen, hiding both men and machines as the battlefield slows for the brief reprieve of nightfall. But inside Rommel's command tent, there is no rest. Maps are sprawled across tables, reports scattered like leaves in a storm, and the Desert Fox paces with a relentless intensity. He has made his calculations. Withdrawal is an option, yes, but it would mean abandoning key positions, surrendering the initiative, and admitting that Patton has outmaneuvered him. Not yet. Not while one shred of the Afrika Korps remains intact. Rommel's mind races through possibilities, counterflanking, concentrating artillery fire, feints to buy time, even risking a small armored counterattack. Every decision teeters on the edge between genius and disaster. Outside, German soldiers work feverishly. Mines are laid, defensive positions reinforced, and flares illuminate the desert intermittently, casting jagged shadows over the sand. Morale is fraying, yet Rommel's presence inspires a measure of resolve. He is a master of calculated risk, and tonight, every calculation carries the weight of life and death. Patton, meanwhile, uses the cover of dusk to reposition his forces. Sherman tanks slide across sand dunes, infantry creeping forward, artillery silently adjusting their fire. The American general's audacity has shifted the rhythm of the battle, keeping German units off balance, forcing Rommel to react rather than dictate. Rommel scribbles in his notes one last time for the evening. Patton's maneuver unprecedented, lines compromised, must consolidate or risk annihilation, yet admiration for precision undeniable. The words are a rare glimpse into the mind of a man who rarely concedes brilliance to an opponent. Frustration and respect wrestle across his features. And then a distant rumble interrupts the night, the faint, steady sound of armored columns moving. Rommel stiffens. He realizes that Patton is preparing another move, one that could strike at the heart of the Afrika Korps before dawn. The Desert Fox feels the weight of history pressing down. The coming hours will define not just this battle, but the legacy of two extraordinary generals confronting each other in the unforgiving North African desert. Mini cliffhanger. As night gives way to the first light of morning, Rommel must make his ultimate decision. Will he gamble everything to counter Patton's brilliance, or will the desert claim the Afrika Korps in a single, unstoppable maneuver? April 1st, 1943. The desert awakens under a pale, washed-out light. Sand dunes stretch endlessly, glowing softly, but the battlefield is anything but calm. Smoke curls from battered German positions, the groan of twisted metal punctuating the silence. You can almost taste the grit in the air, smell the acrid smoke of burning vehicles, and feel the heat of tension pressing down on every soldier. Rommel stands rigid over his map, eyes scanning the unfolding chaos. Every defensive line, every artillery battery, every Panther and Panzer IV has been repositioned, yet gaps remain. Patton's maneuver has left the Afrika Korps dangerously exposed. His flanking movement was precise, audacious, and relentless. The Desert Fox scribbles again, the pen moving faster than ever. Patton dictates the battlefield, must respond decisively or risk encirclement. Time critical. Outside, American forces push forward with unerring precision. Sherman tanks navigate around ridges, infantry secures key high points, artillery supports each advance. Patton's men move like clockwork, every unit anticipating the next. It is a dance of steel and fire, and Rommel realizes that for the first time in North Africa, he is forced onto the defensive. The command tent is tense. Officers await instructions, their eyes flicking nervously between reports and Rommel's every movement. The Desert Fox issues orders, counterattacks, repositioning of artillery, coordination of reserves, but he knows the initiative has shifted. The brilliance of Patton's strategy has placed the Afrika Korps at a critical crossroads: adapt or face potential disaster. Rommel writes his final note on the morning's chaos. American flanking maneuver exceeds expectations. Entire front compromised. Must consolidate and fight with remaining strength. Respect for audacity undeniable. Frustration and admiration coexist in his expression, a rare and human moment in the mind of a legend. He knows that Patton's audacity will be remembered long after the sands of El Gueter have returned to silence. Outside, the first shots of the morning echo, signaling the next stage of the battle. The Desert Fox takes a deep breath, weighing every option, calculating every move. The Afrika Korps has survived so far, but Patton has proven that audacity, speed, and ingenuity can bend even the most disciplined army to its will. Mini cliffhanger. The battle has only begun, yet history has already been written in the margins of Rommel's notes. Patton's maneuver will become a lesson in audacity, a confrontation of minds that will echo across the deserts of North Africa for generations. As the sun climbs higher over El Gueter, the battlefield begins to reveal the consequences of the night's maneuvering. Sherman tanks stand poised on ridges, dust settling from their relentless advance. The Afrika Korps, though battered, remains a force to be reckoned with, but the psychological edge has shifted. Soldiers exchange weary, tense glances, aware that they are facing not just an enemy army, but the audacious mind of General Patton. Inside his tent, Rommel leans over the map one final time. His notes are a record of disbelief, calculation, and begrudging admiration. Each line captures the meticulous documentation of a general forced to confront an unprecedented challenge. He writes, Patton's flanking maneuver executed with precision, lines disrupted, initiative lost, but courage and innovation undeniable. Lesson for all: audacity can overcome expectation. Rommel pauses, the weight of history pressing down. For the first time in North Africa, he faces a tactical brilliance that rivals his own. He knows that Patton's maneuver will be studied, dissected, and admired for generations. It is a testament to what audacity, speed, and calculated risk can achieve on the battlefield. And though the Desert Fox is never one to admit defeat lightly, even he cannot deny the genius of the American general before him. Beyond the tent, the desert stretches endlessly, indifferent to the men and machines that wage war upon it. The sun beats down, illuminating both triumph and struggle. Patton's forces continue their advance, their momentum unstoppable for now. Rommel's troops adjust, regroup, and prepare for the countermeasures that may yet stabilize the front. But the lesson has already been written, not just in maps and reports, but in the pages of Rommel's notes and the memory of those who witnessed it. And somewhere in the shifting sands of El Gueter, the audacity of one American general has forever altered the landscape of desert warfare. It is a confrontation of minds, strategy, and sheer daring, one that would echo across history. Rommel may still command, still fight, but he will never forget the day Patton outmaneuvered him entirely.